This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
This episode is sponsored by Guidance Residential. Guidance Residential has helped over 30,000 families achieve home ownership without compromising their faith. Will you be next? Let them help you. Find Guidance Residential both on Facebook and Instagram at Guidance Residential and get your questions answered. Don't let halal home ownership just be a dream to you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Momming While Muslim podcast. This is Uzma Joffrey. As you can see, I'm flying solo because this is just going to be the way things are as we head into summer, because one of us will be vacationing, one of us won't, one of us will be sick, one of us won't. That's just the way it's going to happen. But teamwork makes the dream work, and Momming While Muslim doesn't want you to go a week without a new episode, or at least an episode. So we'll make sure it happens. I just wanted to let you guys know that you will be seeing more and more posts and stories about Moms Demand Action, the national organization founded by Shannon Watts, and has a new ED who's going to be taking over, I think by the end of 2023. It was born out of the Newtown shooting. For those of you who have followed the podcast for a while, you know that the Newtown shooting is what inspired me to start homeschooling, because I was like, keep my kids in a bubble because I can't let them. Like, my son right now is texting me because he wants to go to the mall. And I'm like, are you freaking crazy? Like, who would go to a mall after what happened in Dallas last week? But he wants to go, and I understand we cannot live in fear. That is exactly what these people who are shooting at public spaces want. But Moms Demand Action was born out of a school shooting, and a response to that, and a response to unregulated assault weapons and guns in this country. Second Amendment aside, there is a way to do this like normal human beings. The rest of the world can do it. But when people in Serbia, when children in Serbia are copying us as Americans, thinking that it's okay to walk into a public space and shoot innocent, unarmed civilians, then that is not the example that we want to set internationally. So I just finished a walk with them today. It was great. Poster boards. Can't say that a lot of women showed up, but that's my chapter. Wherever you have a chapter, it's very easy for you to go online and sign up. We're going to have that link in our show notes, which are not currently on our website, but they are on your podcast app. So when you go to your podcast app, scroll down, you'll see the summary of this episode as well as all of the links in order to sign up. I think it is imperative for all of us to do something. So please do sign up for that. I can and cannot wait for summer. I can't wait because of the vacations that are coming up. But at the same time, excuse me, it's a long time to entertain the kids. So let's see what happens. In the meantime, we are not done exploring Muslim moms overcoming infertility. And to that end, speaking of which, that is our theme series this month. So don't forget to listen to every single episode and follow on your podcast app so you don't miss a new one. Our next guest is someone that married moms-to-be may want to get to know, but our single Muslimas are increasingly likely to do the same, have to overcome infertility treatments or pursue some kind of guarantee that they will maintain their fertility in the future. We're going to talk about why that is. Aneesa Husain is a board-certified physician assistant, and she specializes in infertility. She helps women who are looking at egg freezing as an option. We are grateful to have Aneesa with us to answer all of our questions about this, because it's not something that was an option when we were trying to conceive, and when we were growing up, we didn't hear about it very much. So welcome to the podcast, Aneesa. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Oh, you got to
nice
unmute.
To be here.
I forgot. There's a lag. Okay. That's what that is. Okay. We like to kick off this podcast by asking a little bit about your mom and her momming philosophy.
Sure. So my mom is a Pakistani immigrant, and I'm sure a lot of your audience can probably relate to that as well. So I think, a lot of them have a very similar momming philosophy, perhaps, and that is to, just give their entire lives to raising us. So, we definitely felt all that love growing up and into adulthood. And, sometimes it at that time maybe didn't quite feel like love, but the older you get, you realize that's what it is. And, they did the best they could with the best of intentions. And, you see that, and you definitely take things from that I would like to, take into my parenting journey, inshallah. And also things, of course, that you see, well, we're in a different time, we're in a different place, different mindset, and hopefully, we can grow, from what we saw growing up, and perhaps do things in a way that's conducive to raising children in a different time and place. So yeah, good things, of course, and then things that I think we can see that may need a little bit of shifting.
Mm-hmm. As you're saying that, I am popping cloves into my mouth because that is what my mother taught me during her momming philosophy, is going to quell a cough. So I love that. But also what you say reminds me of the advice of Ali radiallahu anhu, who said, our kids are not, don't raise your kids the way you were raised. I mean, there are different generations, so the way that they need to be raised has to be different. So when you're talking about a way that's conducive to them, it's going to be parenting them in the way that's relevant to them, that they're going to understand and respond to. And that's really, really important. And I think sometimes we forget that in parenting. So it's really important to understand in our history and our culture and our traditions, that is what we've been advised to do as parents, is not to say, well, we didn't do that in our day and our grandparents didn't do that. Yes, because they weren't supposed to. Mm-hmm. And Allah knew that, our, righteous Salaf knew that, our greatest Sahaba knew that. So why can't we get with the program already? It's probably because we didn't read about them. So there you go. So I'm going to ask, how did your interest become infertility? As in, why was that something that you wanted to specialize in professionally? What was your inspiration, or what were your inspirations?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been a PA for a little over 10 years now, and I mostly had done urology throughout, the majority of my career, and I did the male fertility side of things. And I went into that field out of school because I liked the idea of, doing something hands-on and surgical, procedural, with, also a clinical aspect to it. So that was more of my mindset coming out of school. But there was a pretty specific, incident that shifted my interest towards fertility, which was my own fertility journey. And it began with just at, age, I would think I want to say I was 33, and I am currently 37. So at that time, I, was interested in just seeing where things were at. Let me make sure my numbers look okay. I had a history of polycystic ovarian syndrome. I had a history of endometriosis, diagnosed in my early 20s. I still thought I would be fine. And a friend of mine had been thinking about egg freezing. And so I just went in for a consult, didn't think anything of it. Got the news that I have diminished ovarian reserve, and essentially have, at 33, the numbers of someone who's, well into their, like late 40s. So the physician, the reproductive endocrinologist that I saw was, pretty clear about doing this sooner rather than later. And so I went through that process over the next couple of years, 3 different times, 3 different cycles. And I'm so happy that I did that. And then that professionally piqued my interest going through that process and learning about it. So that was a big factor. And then at the same time, there was a lot happening with women's reproductive health, as you guys have been discussing, I think, in your series so far. And although I loved what I did in urology and I loved being a PA, it never had quite felt like a passion to me until now. And it really feels like this field and this work is why I do what I do. And it's, alhamdulillah, been incredibly rewarding. The educational aspect, the empowerment aspect, just people relating to each other, patients relating to me relating to them. It just really turns, a doctor's visit, which can sometimes not be very comfortable for people, into a connection, woman to woman.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's beautiful that you're there, because I know all of the infertility experts that I talked to outside of my OB were men. And, I think I was so glad when I didn't have to pursue any treatments, because, just having men up in there, like, that made me really uncomfortable, and it shouldn't. I know, like, logically it shouldn't, but I couldn't handle it. And so it sounds like a very personal, like, this touched you personally at home, literally in your gut. And that's what inspired it. And that's beautiful. It's perfect, because I think that's what generated maybe the passion for you, because this directly affects me. And now I know what it's like, and I can help all of these women. And I think that kind of a movement is going to be the most successful. Inshallah, may Allah grant you a lot of success in that.
Inshallah.
So how does your particular practice work? When are women coming to you, and when are we bringing up the topic of egg freezing at one point?
So I work for a company. I work for a group called Kind Body. We're nationwide. I'm located in Texas, in Dallas, and I support the Dallas and Houston markets. So we do full, fertility care. So for someone who's just about to try and, start a family, someone who's married, they just kind of want to see where they're at. They'll come see us. There are people who have been trying for several years. Some people even over a decade, have seen several fertility specialists. They'll come to us for second or third opinions. And then we have our egg freezing patients, which are my, particular near and dear to my heart, just because they're, usually single women who, for a variety of reasons, are not in a place in their life where they can have children yet, but they know that they would like to in the future. And some don't always know. Some women are like, well, I'm not sure, but, I would like to at least have the option to. And then there are women like myself where I'm like, I cannot wait to be a mom. Like, I've had baby fever for a very long time. And I know this is absolutely what I want to do, and I will do whatever I can to, do my part to ensure that. So that's, the patient population, and kind of this different stages that they come see us at. And what I'm noticing, in a good way, is that it's getting, people are seeing us at a younger age. So our youngest patient is actually 21. Our oldest patient is 51. So there's a wide age gap. And, the 21-year-old may have had some genetic conditions that they were aware of that they wanted to do, testing on before conceiving.
Okay.
But in general, as far as egg freezing goes, I'm seeing women in their late 20s come see us, which, initially I think that's something that we're seeing somewhat recently now. And it's great because, hopefully when they do plan to fertilize these eggs and get pregnant, that will save them some, quite a bit of time and grief and the emotional stress that can come, with infertility that some people encounter. And you don't know until you get tested. So, if you, let's say, get married in your early 30s and think everything's fine, try for a kid at 33, 34, and it's not okay, then that is, quite stressful. So yeah, that's.
So what I'm hearing is the earlier the better.
Mm-hmm.
And
to get tested,
with the earlier the better. Mm-hmm. The reason being is because not only with age do the number of our eggs decline, but also the quality of the eggs. And what that means is not like my eggs are crusty. The longer those follicles, because we're born with all of the follicles that we're ever going to have, like at birth, we have them. And so that means that those follicles that are sitting in our pelvis have that much more exposure to all of the environmental crap that can mutate the DNA. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about quality. The quality is related to the DNA. It may be like, DNA to cytoplasm ratio, whatever. We talk a lot about cytoplasm and Eve theory here. So you guys have heard me talk about that. That's kind of like my soapbox. So that's why the earlier the better. And if you haven't found your mate, or if you think it's going to take a while for you to have kids because you have educational, professional, travel goals, whatever, maybe go in a little bit early. But that brings up the question. I think it begs the question for cost. How much does it cost to freeze your eggs? And, if you could include the whole testing process, like when people come into you to test quality and quantity, and then the actual freezing, the initial freezing, and then any maintenance cost associated with it.
Sure. So like you were saying, Uzma, we're born with all of the eggs that we have. They're in our ovaries. And, the just science behind it, what happens is once a month, there's a group of those eggs or a batch that floats up to the surface, or we'll call them like premature eggs. And our bodies naturally or normally will ovulate and grow one of those eggs each month. So what we do in egg freezing is we are capturing the batch that is there for the month, because normally after that one gets ovulated, the rest die away. So one of the common questions people ask is this depleting my eggs by freezing them? And the answer is no. The answer is actually we're, saving the ones that would have gone away for the month. So we are giving you medications, which are done as a series of injections over about 2 weeks. And those injections are hormones that we normally produce. So FSH and LH are the two hormones that our body makes to grow our follicles, which contains the eggs. And because we're not just trying to grow one egg, we're trying to grow the whole batch that's there for the month. On average, that's about 20 eggs. We need to amp up the hormones, and we do that with injectable medications. So you're doing these injections daily for about 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I should say during that time frame, because this will kind of go into when we talk about cost, you are coming in for ultrasounds and blood tests to see how your body is responding to the medications. Are the follicles growing appropriately? Because they need to reach a certain size before eggs are mature. And so during that time frame, you're coming in for testing every couple of days. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, you have an egg retrieval. So an egg retrieval is a surgical procedure that it's done while you're asleep. So it's under IV sedation. And we're basically going into each ovary to collect and aspirate or section out the fluid that contains each egg. That then gets sent to the embryologist. Ours is right next door to the operating room, so we just hand it off, and they're actively counting the eggs that were retrieved. And that's essentially the whole process.
I have a question because I have a low tolerance for pain.
Yes.
So my question is, how is the egg retrieval aspiration process done? Is that intravaginally or is that?
Yes. So the retrieval is done vaginally, but remember, you're asleep. You're going to be sedated with, we have an anesthesiologist. So that part, you take a nice long nap, actually. It's like one of the best naps you'll take for 30 minutes. But let me backtrack a little bit and just explain that the ultrasounds we do are vaginal ultrasounds. So that is the best picture that we can get of the ovaries and of the uterus, as opposed to an abdominal ultrasound. So the vaginal probe is not something anyone likes to do, but I try and make it as comfortable for the patients as possible. And I am very big on people telling me if something is uncomfortable for them, because we can, use different probe sizes. We can, adjust our pressure. I'm just all for voicing and advocating, for yourself in the exam room, because that is your personal private space, and no one, not even a clinician, should
literally,
be making you uncomfortable. Exactly. Literally.
And the most important thing is the warm jelly. Like, make sure the jelly is warm before they put it up there. Because as somebody who's had a TV ultrasound, which is just transvaginal, the transvaginal ultrasound is not the most comfortable feeling in the world, but it's not the worst. And again, that's going to be the best picture from the inside of your ovaries, because you can't get a good look at the follicles without it. So that's why don't be afraid. Don't let that be the hindrance. And then for those people who are unmarried, like, oh, something's going to go up my vagina, I'm going to lose my virginity. Girlfriend, like, I'm telling you, none of that matters anymore. And this is like a medical situation. So all the moms with the virgin daughters who are like, oh, la hawla la quwwata, like, now we can't do it. No, like, you're going to bother her later if she runs into infertility issues, and you're going to be wishing and praying she had kids so badly. But if you had allowed this workup, a medical scientific workup, to happen early on, then you won't be crying later for your grandchildren. So, let's stop with the whole archaic, control of a woman's body and her hymen, the hymen hysteria, as I call it. And let's let the girls, especially our professional women who are trying to do everything, because we put everything on their shoulders, let them do this for themselves and lose the hymen hysteria, especially. We're going to get to this a little bit later when we ask about our particular community. But I appreciate that you explained the science of how all of this happens. But can we go back to the costs a little bit, especially for those who are starting this process earlier, as we want them to and encourage them to? Let's let them know what that financial burden is going to be.
Yes, absolutely. So, and even I'll discuss that, but I think I've probably gotten a little ahead of myself. I did want to talk about the testing also.
No worries.
So when someone comes in, to see us, and it's a new egg freezing consult that I'm seeing. One of the first things we test for is something called an AMH level. So AMH stands for anti-Mullerian hormone. It's a blood test, and we test for a whole panel of things, but that's really one of the main things we're interested in, and it is a marker of your egg reserve. So normally that, is between 1 to 4. It changes as we get older. Like Uzma, you were saying earlier, how our quantity, goes down as we get older. So if someone is in their mid-20s, that number is going to be closer to 4. If someone is in their, later 30s, that number is going to be closer to less than 1. And then either end of the spectrum, above 4 or less than 1 is, those are conditions, too high of an AMH or follicle count is PCOS or polycystic ovaries. Too low of a count is diminished ovarian reserve. So that is part of the testing, as well as an initial vaginal ultrasound. This is where we are counting the follicles in your ovaries that have come up for the month. So on average, we see about 8 to 12 per side, left and right ovary. And the initial testing that someone comes in for, and I can speak, I would say for most clinics, this is about standard. It's, if you have insurance, it's billed to your insurance. So it's as if you were going to go see a dermatologist or a GI doctor. You're just coming in to see a medical specialist. So the diagnostic testing, which is done prior to someone starting an egg freezing cycle, just gets billed to their insurance. It's dependent on what plan you have. If you have a copay, it's a copay. If you have a high deductible, it might go towards that. But once someone starts the egg freezing process, that altogether is going to be roughly about $12,000. So it varies clinic to clinic, but it's going to be in that range. I would say 12,000 is a pretty good average, I would say. So that includes your, ultrasound monitoring during the 2 weeks that you're on medications. It includes the blood work. It includes the egg retrieval. Keep in mind that is considered a surgical procedure with an anesthesiologist. So that is a bulk of the cost. And then that also includes medications. So these medications are not cheap. And I would like to add that there are programs specifically for patients who are interested in egg freezing with different drug companies. So any clinic that you go to, ask what they have available. Sometimes, I don't know if you feel like this, Isma, in your practice, you see so many different patients, and sometimes, we sometimes forget about all the different things companies have to offer. So I always tell people, remind me to, look and, when you go through this process, let's talk about the medications again. And, I'll tell you who has some things set up for a discount. And at Kindbody,
I'm all about like giving patients like good RX coupons and like coupon this, coupon that. You can like call this company and get your insulin for free. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we use at our, the company I'm currently with, Kindbody, we work with employers that partner with us to get their employees coverage for fertility services. So Walmart was our most recent, partnership. So Walmart employees, someone who, may not have been able to afford IVF or egg freezing, perhaps is like, works as a cashier at Walmart. They get $20,000 to $25,000 to use, for something like this. Another company we work with is WeWork. I'm actually at one of their locations right now. And WeWork, they give their employees up to, I think it's like $60,000 to use towards services. So if anyone's listening and you're curious about if your company, is one of our partners, you can definitely look that up on our website and within your own, HR. And if you do want to become a partner with us, or you want your employer to look into it, there's, a space on our website for that as well. So we're really trying to, and it's another reason why I love where I'm at, is because we're really trying to make these services accessible to more and more people. These were things that, and in a lot of places they still are. All 3 egg freezing cycles were self-pay. So, every little bit helps.
100%, 100%. So it does now, all of this is like setup cost, 12,000. Then isn't there like a monthly fee and a setup fee at an egg bank? Like what would that look like?
Yes, so there is. So once your eggs are retrieved, what happens is that they will be frozen or cryopreserved, as we call it. And they are typically, most clinics will cover 1 year of storage at their facility. So most clinics, including ours, we store tissue at our facility covered for 1 year. And then you have the option to transfer it to a long-term storage facility that's local to you. And wherever that's at, the average cost is about $600 to $800 per year. So it's usually a yearly rate.
Oh, so that's surprisingly low. I thought it would be in the thousands. So that makes me really happy. Is there a penalty for like withdrawing your deposit? Like a cost?
Could you clarify?
You know how like with your 401 and stuff, if you take your money out early, they like penalize you? Is that how egg banks work too?
Not at all. No. So a lot of people, if, once you're ready to use them, take them out. I don't believe that they charge you for that. I believe the fees are just for storage. Now, transport is a different, topic though. So let's say your, tissue, your embryos or eggs are at, a location where you are not getting treatment at, if you have frozen eggs, then, eventually if you are fertilizing them and creating embryos of fertilized egg that's been divided, and fertilized with sperm. So, you'll need to transport your eggs from where they're at. And then if you created embryos in a different clinic and you're with a different group now, that is also a fee to transport those eggs and embryos. So, but yes, no penalty.
Yeah, because I was going to say, do I have to take my own cooler? Okay.
Some people do. Some people take their liquid nitrogen tanks and bring them over themselves too.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that's one way to,
Wow.
yeah,
No,
that's
that
one
would
way
not be
to
me. I'm
cut the
not that brave.
cost.
Okay. So, if we have to, I hope that people who are lucky enough to find a good clinic that has storage for a year or however long, then you're going to transfer to a long-term facility. Are there specific things that we should be looking for in those long-term egg banks?
Yes. So I guess main thing is to make sure that it is a legitimate place that your clinic knows about. So most clinics will be able to refer you to, different storage facilities. So if it's something that no one's heard of, don't use it. I think one of the major ones in Texas
Okay,
and
good
some
to know.
other states, I believe. Yeah. The main one in Texas is called ReproTech. So if you're in Texas and you hear that, that's a very reliable bank. That's where my eggs are stored. And I believe there's, different ones per region in the country. So look for something that, your clinic knows about, that they recommend. And if you are choosing something on your own, then just make sure it's at least local, and that you've researched their fees. And if it's something crazy like $5,000 a year, that's not normal.
Red flag. Okay, that's good to know. We've read the horror stories about egg banks that have shut down in the middle of the night and your eggs are gone, or your eggs have been sold. So, like, is there something when you're signing the contract that says like I have the key and like nobody else has the key to access my eggs? Like, is there security measures? You can tell like I've been hurt by people, so I'm super paranoid.
Yeah, there are a lot of checks and balances that go into anytime tissue is retrieved, stored, transferred. There's a lot of documents you have to sign. There's some uncomfortable questions you have to answer in those documents too. What's going to happen to this tissue if I die? Who gets these? Am I going to donate them to research, or do
Oh,
I want to discard them? So there's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of tracking, which is, again, like Uzma, you were saying, is so important to make sure that you are with a reputable clinic that has reputable resources and storage facilities that they recommend. Unfortunately, there are instances where we've heard of things. Usually, you hear about them on the news. Someone had someone else's embryo put in them, or eggs got destroyed. It's definitely, thankfully, not common. It's incredibly rare. And we do not, at our clinic anyways, we do not transfer or do anything to your tissue unless you have, we've communicated and things have been signed. And there's a lot of legal agreements to all of these things.
perfect. So bottom line, it takes supreme incompetence to mess it up with these eggs that you're supposed to protect. So that makes me feel really comfortable.
A
So
good way to put it.
without violating, yeah, without violating any HIPAA, have you seen any changes? You did say that you've seen younger women coming for egg banking, but I think what I would like to see and what I would like to hear is a little bit of information about the Muslim community, using freezing eggs or egg freezing as a way to prolong or preserve their fertility.
Yes. So I will say, one thing that we've noticed at our clinic in this, area that I work in Dallas, is that, and myself included, that South Asian women, and I guess we can, say South Asian Muslim women, we're just, and this is anecdotal. I haven't looked at any research yet about this, but just personally seeing, low egg reserve. And, there's different reasons why someone can have a low egg reserve at a time where they're not supposed to have quite that low of an egg reserve. Again, this is something that, you test for with the blood test and then ultrasound. That's how we know. But one of the things that can impact it is, certain genetic mutations. and I don't think this should come as a surprise to the audience, but in the South Asian, perhaps Arab cultures and a lot of Muslim cultures, you know, there are a lot of marriages that occur between, you know, cousins, second cousins, that we see. And, you know, sometimes there are certain conditions that can get passed along that can actually impact our fertility. So one of the blood tests I do recommend people do is called a genetic carrier screen. And that's something that most fertility clinics will offer. Some will require it. But that lets us know if you're, you know, if you are a carrier for any of these genetic mutations. So that's one thing that, you know, potentially, you know, we see can impact this. And another, you know, just thing, and since we're talking about things that can impact egg quantities, if someone's on, you know, contraception, oral contraceptive pill for a long period of time. I was on that because of my endometriosis for over a decade, and I do think that had some impact on my quantity. So I am, you know, seeing a lot of our Muslim sisters come into the clinic and get tested. And, you know, thankfully, some of them don't need to do too much, right? Some of them are, you know, in their mid-20s, and you can have that conversation like, hey, you have great egg quality in your mid-20s. You can totally freeze your eggs, you know, or you can, you know, come back in a year or two, you know, if you know, maybe you still haven't found, you know, your right partner yet, and we can test again. But more importantly is, you know, the women I'm seeing come in that are in their early to mid-30s that are really taking control of their reproductive health and their futures because they know they want to be mothers. That's something that's very important to them. And they are not willing to, you know, maybe undergo, you know, or pursue something that's not right for them just for, you know, the chance at having kids. You know, some people are in not great relationships or marriages that I've seen freeze eggs, and you kind of initially start talking to them about embryos and they, you know, convey to you that they're not comfortable having a child with their current partner, that perhaps they're in an abusive relationship. They're planning to, you know, maybe leave their partner. So there's lots of situations, you know, like we were talking about. There's, you know, career, there's, you know, just, you know, life, not being with the right person or not having met that person yet that you want to have children with. And I think talking about it, just bringing these things up in our community is just so important because I didn't know about this in my 20s either. My gynecologists have never even mentioned it to me. So I think just the fact that we're discussing it is huge. And hopefully women will see that, hey, this is an option. This is not, to my knowledge, and I don't know, somebody you can correct me if I'm wrong, in any way against what Islam, you know, says by preserving our fertility. So, you know, and I hope to, you know, learn more about the Islamic perspective on, you know, the variety of fertility treatments in general, but Islam is very science forward. So, you know, Allah has created this for us for a reason to utilize.
Alhamdulillah. And like we have the link in our show notes for a white paper from Fordham University. And we also have, I think, something from Yaqeen Institute. And there's only really one thing so far that in infertility treatment options is a no-no for Muslims. And I think that's going to change. In the next 10 years, I think enough scholarship is going to be done that there's going to be some caveats there that are added to make it even more flexible. Because like you said, alhamdulillah, our religion is super science forward. Something like egg freezing, you know, there's a whole Christian fundamentalist movement to go and save the babies. And so they're going to these egg banks with these eggs that are not going to be used. The mothers don't want to use them. They don't plan to, and they're buying these eggs or getting these eggs somehow and getting them fertilized. However, I don't know whether it's in a dish or whether it's, you know, I don't know. It has to be in a dish, I guess. And they're birthing these babies. The eggs belong to somebody else or were donated from somebody. No, they were frozen by somebody else, but they're saving the babies because to them, in their theology, ideology, this is a baby. For us, this is not a baby. This is tissue. You know, this is just a cell, like one of the largest cells in our bodies, but it hasn't become a person. It's not a person. We don't have a person until 40 days of life in utero. That's when you get our soul. This is a soulless piece of tissue. It's no different than aspirating a bunch of pus out of a wound, or like taking a skin biopsy and sending it to pathology, or not mourning that piece of skin that went to pathology. You're screening for cancer. So I am so glad, alhamdulillah, that we are Muslim and we have this I don't know. I don't want to say common sense because I don't want to seem derogatory to those people who are saving all the babies. But you're not saving a baby. You're just saving an egg. You're saving a piece of tissue. Do you want my snot? No. So I love that we have this option. And, what came to mind as you were talking is it's not just having a bad partner, not having the right partner, finding the person, profession. There's also more and more cancer. And we're seeing young and younger people with some kind of autoimmune disease, or we're seeing them with cancer. And sometimes the same therapy is used for both. So there are chemotherapeutic agents that we are using for these young women, and that can have a big effect, if not on the quantity, then on the quality of your eggs. So if God forbid, anybody were diagnosed with any of these, and typically autoimmune conditions are getting diagnosed earlier and earlier. My daughter has an autoimmune condition. So, I would want her to have the option to freeze her eggs should she want to have children. Now, luckily, I have turned her off having children because I've made it look so bad. She's like, I never want to have these little rats, but never say never. It's better to have a contingency, right? So that just brings all kinds of things to mind. So thank you for sharing all of that, Aneesa. But, I'm just so interested, and I want to know about your success stories with egg freezing. What do some of them have in common? What do they look like? How do they make you feel? And of course, we're not violating any HIPAA because we're not talking about any patient specifics.
These are this is literally when I go to work and I have these visits. It's just so rewarding, and it just reminds me I'm so glad I do this. I'm so happy to do this. So it really starts at the first visit. That initial visit, let's say the initial 10, 15 minutes, I was this way too. I was nervous to have the discussion, not sure if I wanted to do it. And the way I structure my visits is very, it's not hopefully me talking at somebody, but it's a conversation. What do you want to know? Where are you at in your life? Tell me a little bit about yourself. I really want to get to know the person. And that's how I've always, practiced, because people will do best with whatever treatment if they trust you. If you get a patient that is just the whole time, against everything, and they're just not going to do well, just because, I feel like our attitudes have a lot to do with it. So just breaking through that initial kind of piece of anxiety, not to say that, people aren't anxious throughout this process, but just gaining that trust. I really see people kind of, change in the visit towards the end. They're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. I really want to do this. There's a calmness that comes over them. And we really, try to be there to support them throughout that process. So every, couple of days when you're coming in for an ultrasound and lab work, I see our patients, looking along with us, and they're like, oh, that follicle got bigger. And, oh, it looks like, things are looking good. Or, if they're not, we always want to leave them with something positive. So it's okay, maybe they're not perfect right now today, but we're going to up your dose and come back in 2 days. So as far as, patient stories go, it's really throughout the whole process. And then at the end of it, I really haven't met anyone yet that said that they regret doing this. Most people, most women are like, I'm so glad I did it. I didn't realize how easy it would be. I didn't realize how short the amount of time is, and the injections aren't too bad. That's always everyone's biggest thing is oh, I don't want to inject myself, but they're little needles. They're subcutaneous. They go into the skin of your tummy. So it's seeing, that process of them just going through it and coming out feeling really empowered. And so much so that, sometimes people need to do a few other cycles. Not everyone will get the amount of eggs. We can only work with what your body gives us for the month. So some people, are ready to go into their next cycle. They're like, hey, that wasn't bad. I'm ready to, I want 3 children. I know I'm going to need to do a couple more cycles, and just seeing them come out even more confident about themselves, you can really see the shift that occurs from that first visit to when you see them towards the end. And I would say just overall, that's like been the theme that I've seen in these women. So the question was, out of the eggs that are retrieved, how many embryos are created from that, or how many potential embryos could be created. So not every egg we retrieve will be mature. We see about an 80% maturity rate. So let's say someone collects, 20 eggs, we'll probably see maybe like 17 to 18 of those mature. And the mature eggs are the ones that are frozen. Immature eggs get discarded. We do give them some time to mature over a day, but you can't fertilize immature eggs. So later on, when, someone is ready to use those eggs, we need to thaw them. So let's say we have 18 eggs that, you need to thaw. We see about up to a 90% thaw rate. So let's say you have 17 that are successfully thawed. And then those will get fertilized with sperm, your partner's sperm, and about 70% fertilize normally, and about half of those grow into embryos. And then if someone chooses to do genetic testing on the embryos, called PGT, then, we see about half of those that are chromosomally normal, which are the ones you would want to implant. So you don't have to remember all these numbers, but just understand
I was doing the math as you're talking. It's like you're going to have 3 viable eggs for fertilization at the end of that.
Exactly. Yeah. So out of 20 eggs that are retrieved, you'll have 3, chromosomally normal embryos remaining to implant. So I know that sounds drastic, but if you think about it, this is why not everyone gets pregnant every single month they try. If there was 100% success rate, we would be pregnant every month we tried.
Every month.
Yeah. And so, potentially. So, that's a very normal drop-off rate that we see when we do IVF, and when you fertilize these frozen eggs, that is essentially IVF that you're doing. So in order to have the chance of one baby, it's age dependent. So let's say someone's 35 years old, they will need at least 15 eggs for the 70% chance of having one child. So when you are thinking about how many cycles to go through, it really depends on what your numbers are currently at and how many children you want to have. So if someone wants, one child, they might be set after one cycle. If someone wants 3 children, you're probably going to, especially in your 30s, you're going to need to do more than one cycle, most likely.
That makes so much sense. But that means, like you said, about 12,000 times however many children you want. So start investing, ladies. That's so
Start
funny.
investing.
Start investing in yourself. Like, this is really investing in the things that you want the most. So I think that that's super duper important. So we thank you for all of that information. If anybody has more questions, we'll direct them to your company website. And if you're okay with it, your email, you just let us know how much or how little information of yours to put out there on our show notes. And then, we like to wrap up with a rapid fire where you've given us all this information about your specialty and about egg freezing. We want to get to know you a little bit better. So we put 90 seconds on the clock, and the first answer that comes to mind is always the correct answer. You ready to play?
Okay, let's do it.
I promise. Okay. So first question is always, what book are you reading right now?
It's by Melinda Gates. I think it's called The Power of Lift, or The Moment of Lift. I can't remember the exact title. It's excellent. It's about maternal reproductive health.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That is like totally appropriate for this podcast series. So thank you for that. That's amazing. Yeah. What is your favorite word in another language?
Ooh. I'm going to say just recently, this has become my favorite word, is sukoon in Urdu.
Wait, say that again?
Sukoon.
Sukoon. Oh, love that. Peace.
Sakina.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, absolutely. What is your favorite store to get groceries? Sorry, we have a rapid fire generator and it wants to know your favorite store to get groceries.
Central Market.
Central Market. Oh, that's not
That's
not here.
Okay. It must be a Texas
It's a Texas thing. Yeah.
Central Market. And if you've been to Dallas, Almarca is right across the street for me.
Yeah,
My favorite
that's
place
where you
to
get our halal
groceries.
stuff.
Yeah, and some
Your
good
Essence
nahari.
halal marshmallows.
So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The timer says you're done, but I don't care. I'm asking this question.
Okay.
What is the stupidest dare you ever agreed to do?
Oh my God, I don't know if it was I don't know if I've ever been dared to do anything, but I've been pushed to do things that are out of my comfort zone. And I guess the stupidest thing would be, and alhamdulillah I survived, was, I was in Jordan. I don't know if you've been to Petra, but if you hike Petra, it's insane. The Bedouins that are there that are leading these hikes, they're literally flying from cliff to cliff, and you look down and you're like, oh, I might die if I accidentally sneeze or cough. And something in me, they were pushing me, and everyone else in my group wanted to go, and I was like, okay, we'll do this adventurous hike.
So you jump the cliff.
Yeah, just I was getting pulled in all different directions by people I didn't know physically.
Yeah.
So
for people who haven't been there, it's at least 100-foot drop from like the lowest of the cliffs that are over there. So that was pretty stupid, but I'm so glad you did it and braved it. You did save your eggs before you did that, right?
I did. Yes, this was smart. I did that before. Yeah. If you're going to do some crazy stuff, just come see me first.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this information. We hope that somebody finds it helpful. Even if one person finds it helpful, we've done our job today. So thank you everyone for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.